Okay, guys, so in this video, we're going to talk about Boeing stock and how the whole bailout situation and the issuing of bonds is going to affect you as a shareholder. And also, we're going to kind of recap on what happened with earnings. So we have a lot to talk about in this video. And Boeing has been one of the more confusing situations when it comes to the overall stock market. The company is actually America's world largest exporter of goods, and the company not just deals in aerospace, they deal in defense weapons and things like that, services. So it's a really diversified company, a very big company, and a very important company in terms of America overall. So let's just get right into it, guys. Let's just quickly, we're going to go over the latest earnings report and kind of demystify it, and then I'm going to show you guys exactly how Boeing's latest decisions affect shareholders. So let's just get right into it, guys. As always, I really recommend, okay, guys, so what I really recommend doing is going to read some of these earnings reports because they really help you figure out exactly what the company is doing and where it's headed into the future. So Boeing reported earnings on April 29th, and they had a massive drop in revenue due to the whole coronavirus situation, but also that 737 MAX grounding situation that happened last year, where those 737 planes just kept falling out of the sky. So Boeing has been dealing with kind of a really tough 18 months for the company. So let's just quickly go over the earnings reports. So as you can see here, they suffered some pretty big losses. So they lost $641 million and net earnings per share loss of $1.11 per share, in a devastating operating cash flow loss as well. So these losses were really terrible. So let's just read exactly what David Calhoun, CEO, said. He said the coronavirus pandemic is affecting every aspect of our business, including airline customer demand, production continuity, and supply chain stability. Our primary focus is on the health and safety of our people and communities while we take tough but necessary action to navigate this unprecedented health crisis and adapt for a changed marketplace. So he talks a bit more about obviously how the industry has been affected. So it says, while coronavirus is adding unprecedented pressure to our business, we remain confident in our long-term future. We continue to support our defense customers and their critical national security missions. We are progressing towards a safe return to the service of 737 MAX, and we are driving safety, quality, and operational excellence into all that we do every day. Air travel has always been resilient. Our portfolio of products and technology is well positioned. We are confident we will emerge from the crisis and thrive again as the leader of our industry. So let's just take a quick look. That's what he said. So let's take a quick look at some of the changes that they have done. So one of the most important things, guys, of course, Boeing has suspended its dividend. So for you guys out there that are dividend and growth investors, or you have a dividend portfolio, make sure you take that into account, into a change in your annual income, because they did suspend the dividend. So they've done a couple of things. Of course, they extended the existing pause on share repurchases and suspended dividend payments until further notice. They reduced or deferred research and development and capital expenditures, eliminated CEO and chairman pay for the year. So that means David Calhoun is not taking a salary. Okay. So basically, they're just doing this to just cut costs and just to do as much as possible to save cash and kind of make sure that they're going to get through this situation. So now I want to talk a bit more about how the earnings itself will kind of impact the company, and I'm going to show you guys some of the things that they have done when it comes to the government bailout. So here's an article posted on CNBC, and it talks a lot more. So I just showed you guys basically the general gist of the earnings report, but now I want to talk a bit more. I want to show you guys some interesting things. So as you can see here, Boeing has really had a tough couple of quarters. So 3 out of the last 4 quarters have been negative income. So the stock has been absolutely crushed. But the good thing is that the stock was actually up a bit on the earnings, so I think people are a little bit more confident. But as you can see here, over the last year, the stock has been absolutely crushed. So I know a lot of you guys are holding a pretty big stake in Boeing, so I want to just talk a bit more about some of the things that I picked up as I was researching this company and whether or not it's a good long-term investment and how the bailout will affect you. So let's get right back into it. As I said, they've been really, struggling overall. And here's some really interesting thing that David Calhoun said. So he said, with air travel, U.S. down 95% a year from a year ago. Calhoun told shareholders on Monday it will likely take 2 or 3 years for travel demand to recover to 2019 levels, a sharp turnaround for an industry that just early this year was betting on continued growth. He said the pandemic is also delivering a body blow to our business, affecting airline customer demand, production continuity, and supply chain stability. Calhoun said in a staff memo, adding that demand for commercial airline travel has fallen off a cliff. So they were already dealing with the 737 problem. So for some of you guys that are just new to owning Boeing stock, I just want to talk about that. 2019, there were two airplanes that just literally just fell out of the sky, and they were produced by Boeing. So what they did was that they grounded those planes, and that was already bad for business. And then the coronavirus thing kind of basically affected most of the travel industry in general. So it's just been really, really, really tough couple 18 months for Boeing in general. So it also said Boeing recently drawn down on a nearly $14 billion loan and sought $60 billion in government aid for itself and its supply chain. But it says, but Calhoun balked at the possibility of providing the government an equity stake in return for federal aid. So guys, so let's talk about the whole bailout situation. So basically what happened is that Boeing asked for, a bunch of cash, $60 billion, and the government actually wanted to own Boeing stock. Yes, the taxpayers wanted to own Boeing stock. So, of course, they said absolutely not. So, what actually ended up happening is that Boeing ended up issuing bonds to kind of solve their liquidity problem. So, it doesn't look like they're going to accept any bailout money. Okay, so it turns out that late Thursday, it says Boeing raised $25 billion in massive bond sale, turns down bailout funds. So of course, Boeing did not want to give up a stake to the taxpayers, so they ended up just issuing their own bonds. So it says Boeing has raised $25 billion in a massive debt sale, allowing it to avoid tapping a $17 billion bailout fund meant to shore up businesses. It says the company announced Thursday that it would not accept any additional funding from private or government sources before the bond sale closes on Monday. The announcement came ahead of the Friday deadline to accept federal funding through the $2 trillion CARES Act. So it does say that federal funds still could filter through to the company's 17,000 suppliers. Boeing has suggested the broader aerospace manufacturing industry should receive at least $60 billion to see it through the crisis. So turning down the funds means company will not have to give the government an ownership stake, a requirement that executives had said they wouldn't accept. So as we can see here, guys, this is what Boeing has done. So Boeing has been very clever. They are not going to receive any government bailout money. So that does mean that's very good for Boeing shareholders, because you definitely don't want the taxpayers to own a stake in Boeing. It just doesn't seem like a good idea, because honestly, companies borrow money all the time. To have to give up a stake of the company just seems ridiculous. And it's much better that they issued their own bonds. So I'll explain to you guys how these bonds work. It's very simple. Okay, so let's just get a little bit in like bond issuing by corporations 101. So I'm on Investopedia, and it's basically issuing bonds is one way for companies to raise money. A bond functions as a loan between an investor and a corporation. The investor agrees to give the corporation a certain amount of money for a specific period of time. In exchange, the investor receives periodic interest payments when the bond reaches its maturity date. The company repays the investor. So basically what Boeing has done is Boeing is simply just issued some bonds, and those bonds don't mature for a very long time. So I'm actually on Exos.com, and it talks more about the bond deal. So as it says here, the company's 7-part bond offering, which Wall Street Journal reports is one of the largest ever, includes maturities ranging from 3 to 40 years. So basically, here's some thoughts about it from Exos' Joan Mueller. The huge bond deals are a vote of confidence in Boeing's staying power despite the uncertainty caused by the pandemic. Accepting federal aid would have been controversial, as Boeing's already faced financial difficulties because of the grounding of its best-selling plane, the 737 MAX. CEO David Calhoun also balked at the idea of giving the U.S. Treasury a stake in the company. So guys, how does this bond deal affect shareholders? So the good thing is that there will not be a government bailout. So guys, don't worry about that. Basically just that's done, because the Friday deadline is today. It's going to pass today. So That's out. So I'll show you guys exactly how this is going to affect shareholders. So as we take a look now, we're looking at Boeing's balance sheet. So in balance sheet, you have assets and then you have liabilities and equity. And on the balance sheet, the assets equals liabilities and equity. So the two have to balance each other out. So as you can see here on Boeing's Q1, March 31st, 2020, they have total assets 143 billion. And then as you can see here, if we come down to the bottom, total liabilities and equity 143 billion. So all that's going to happen is that that's going to basically add to the liabilities. So issuing bonds that would usually be considered long-term debt, so that will just balloon this number a lot. So they issue $25 billion in bonds, and they have between 3 to 40 years to pay those bonds back. But the good thing is that they don't have to give up a stake in the company, and that is going to mean that your stake is more valuable. So you guys, I hope I kind of explained that whole situation a little bit better. It's very confusing on what Boeing's been doing to stay afloat and to raise money, but I think it's the best situation. A lot of companies have been issuing bonds as a way to avoid these bailout funds, because a lot of these bailout funds come with extra tricks and extra side notes and things like that these companies don't want to deal with. So guys, where do I think Boeing stock is going in the future? Well, as you can see here, it looks like we're taking a phase one when it comes to the four phases and a stocks movement. So you have accumulation, the run up, distribution, and the run down. So if I go to show you guys what I'm talking about, I like to look at this diagram all the time to kind of give me a rational look on where a stock is headed. Okay, so I hope you guys can see this diagram well. It basically documents the four stages and stocks, and most stocks on the market, whether it's Tesla or Boeing, they trade in this kind of these phases. So first you have the accumulation stage. This is where the buying is occurring. Then usually there's an uptrend where the buyers rush in and then short sellers get squeezed out. And then you have distribution. This is where a lot of the intelligent investors, they're taking profits and things like that, selling off the stock. And then this is when the sellers kind of rush in and there's a lot of panic selling and things like that, and the stock has dropped. So if you guys want to take a look at this stage 4 and stage 1 graph, if you can just picture this in your head right here, and we're going to take a look at Boeing stock. It's almost the exact same. So this would be stage 4. That means right now we're in stage 1 again. So I think this is a perfect time to buy Boeing stock, long term, of course. And when I say long term, I'm talking in the next 1 to 2 years, because do not expect travel to rebound anytime soon. This is a really tough period for all people in the travel industry. That's hotels, cruise lines, airlines, and aerospace suppliers like Boeing. So there is no dividend, guys. So remember that. I think that's a really important thing, because I know a lot of you guys out there own Boeing stock for the dividend. So if you are just owning stock for the dividend, I'm not really sure when the dividend's going to come back. Your guess is as good as mine, but I would suspect probably by 2021 there will not be any dividend for the rest of the year. So make sure you guys take a mental note of that if you guys are out there dividend investing. But if you guys are looking for a long-term buy and hold, there's no reason why Boeing shouldn't bounce back. I mean, the company is doing well by issuing its own bonds, and I think that they'll be okay. It's just a tough time, basically, but it's come when companies are facing extreme challenges. And if we look at the 5-year chart, we can just blow it up even more. We can see that we can see at one point Boeing was about $433 before that whole, 737 MAX problem. So guys, in my opinion, you're getting Boeing stock at a ridiculous discount. Once the 737 MAX problem is figured out, once the whole coronavirus situation is past us, I don't see any reason why Boeing stock couldn't go much higher in the future. Remember, now you're basically getting it at the same price as it was back in 2017. So a very nice opportunity. And then if we go back even further in a longer term chart, you can see that this looks like buying Boeing stock back here. The stock was on a tear, and then now it's way down. So if things rebound, I don't see any reason why Boeing won't go much higher in the future. A great opportunity for long-term investors. Thumbs up this video if you enjoy my content, and subscribe for more videos. I post videos on the stock market every day, so be sure to hit that red subscribe button for more updates. So that's until next time, guys. Take care.